Tom lived in a small wooden house at the edge of the valley. His days were simple. He worked on the farm, fed his animals, and watched the sky when the sun went down. He was used to silence and the soft sound of the wind moving through the trees. Nothing strange ever happened in his life until one night changed everything. The sky was dark, and the stars were shining clearly. Tom leaned on the wooden fence and looked upward, enjoying the peace. Suddenly, he noticed something unusual. A streak of bright light appeared in the sky. At first, he thought it was only a shooting star. He had seen many before, and they always faded quickly. But this one did not fade. Instead, it grew brighter and bigger. It moved faster, cutting across the sky like fire. Tom's heart began to beat harder. This was no shooting star. The light twisted and spun, leaving a trail of sparks behind it. Then he heard a sound, deep and shaking. It was like the sky was breaking apart. The light was falling toward the valley, and Tom realized it was about to hit the forest not far from his land. There was a loud crash. The ground trembled under his feet, and birds flew from the trees, crying in fear. A glow rose from the forest, flickering orange and blue. Smoke lifted into the night. Tom knew at once that something had fallen. Curiosity pulled him forward. Without thinking too much, he grabbed a lantern and ran down the dirt path that led to the trees. The forest was thick, but Tom knew the way well. He moved quickly, jumping over roots and pushing past branches. As he came closer, he could smell smoke in the air. The light grew brighter until it lit the path in front of him. His steps slowed when he finally reached the clearing. Tom stopped in shock. Before him was not a rock or a broken plane. It was something he had never seen before. A strange ship lay in the dirt, torn and bent from the crash. Its shape was smooth, like a shell, shining with a silver color even under the smoke and fire. Strange lights blinked on its sides, some still alive, others broken and sparking. The crash had carved a long path through the trees, leaving them snapped like sticks. Tom's breath caught in his throat. He had heard stories of machines from the sky, but never believed them. Now one was right in front of him. He thought of running back, but something inside him kept him still. The ship was damaged, and he could hear a faint sound coming from within. It was not the sound of metal or fire. It was a voice. Without wasting another moment, Tom rushed closer. Heat burned his face as flames licked at the side of the ship. The voice was clearer now, soft but full of pain. He could not understand the words, but he knew it was calling for help. Tom pushed through smoke and fire until he found an opening in the side of the ship. Metal was bent outward, as if it had been forced open by the crash. He lifted his lantern high and looked inside. There, sitting against the wall, was a figure. At first, he thought it was a person, but as the light fell on her face, he saw she was not like anyone he had ever known. Her skin was pale with a faint glow, her eyes large and shining as if they held light within. She wore a strange uniform, marked with signs he could not read. She looked weak, her arm pinned by a piece of broken metal. Tom's mind raced. He could not believe what he was seeing. Yet the fear did not last. The figure was alive, and she needed help. That was all that mattered. He placed the lantern on the ground and pushed against the heavy piece of metal. It did not move at first, but he pressed harder, gritting his teeth until it shifted enough for her to pull her arm free. She gasped in pain, but tried to move. The fire was growing stronger. Sparks flew round them, and the air was hot. Tom quickly reached out his hand. The alien woman looked at him with wide glowing eyes. For a moment she hesitated, then slowly lifted her hand and placed it in his. Tom pulled her out from the broken ship, lifting her weight against his shoulder. She was lighter than he expected, but weak, almost falling as they stepped out into the open air. Behind them, the ship gave a loud groan, metal twisting under heat. Tom hurried, pulling her away from the flames. Just as they reached the edge of the clearing, a blast of fire burst from the side of the ship, throwing sparks high into the night. Tom shielded her with his body, feeling the heat across his back. But they were safe. They collapsed on the ground away from the burning wreck. The woman coughed, holding her arm, her glowing eyes still locked on him. She tried to speak, Her voice broken, her words strange. Yet among the sounds, Tom heard something clear. She whispered one word, slow and heavy with meaning. It sounded like Captain. Tom stared at her, confused. He was only a farmer, not a leader, not a pilot. But in her eyes, he saw something different. To her, he was the one who had saved her when her ship was about to take her life. She looked at him with respect, and he felt a strange weight settle in his chest. He had no idea what this meant, but he knew his life would never be the same. Again, the fire burned behind them, lighting the forest in a strange glow. Tom sat beside the alien woman, still holding her steady. The night was no longer silent, and his world was no longer ordinary. The stars above seemed closer, and the path of his life had taken a turn he could never have imagined. The fire from the strange ship still burned in the distance, sending smoke into the night air. Tom sat on the ground with the alien woman leaning against his shoulder. She was weak. Breathing slowly, her glowing eyes half closed, Tom felt the heat of the wreck on his back, but he stayed calm. He knew they could not stay in the open. Someone might see the fire and come to investigate. He had to move her to safety before dawn. "Can you walk?" Tom asked softly, though he was not sure she understood his words. The woman blinked slowly, then tried to stand. Her legs shook, and she almost fell. Tom caught her arm and pulled it over his shoulder. She leaned against him, and together they moved away from the clearing. Step by step, Tom guided her down the forest path. He was strong from years of farm work, and though she was weak, she was light enough for him to carry most of her weight. The lantern's glow lit the path, and the crickets sang as if nothing strange had happened. But Tom's mind was racing. He kept looking at the woman's glowing eyes and pale skin. She was not human, yet she trusted him enough to let him help her. That thought gave him courage to continue. After a long walk, they reached his small farm. The animals stirred as he entered the barn. Tom gently laid her on a pile of hay, soft and dry. She looked around with curiosity, her glowing eyes moving across the wooden walls, the tools, and the sleeping animals. Tom fetched a blanket and covered her. He gave her a cup of water from a wooden bucket. She held it carefully, sniffed it, then drank slowly. The way she moved was strange, as if she was used to a different world, but she seemed grateful. "Who are you?" Tom asked, pointing at her. Then he placed a hand on his chest and said, "Tom." The woman looked at him for a moment, then touched her own chest. "Lyra," she said, her voice soft and uneven. Tom repeated, "Lyra." The name felt light on his tongue. She nodded slowly, then pointed at him and said in her broken voice, "Captain." Tom frowned. "No, not Captain, farmer." "Tom." He pointed to the barn, then to the field outside. Lyra tilted her head, not understanding fully. To her, the word captain seemed to have deep meaning. She repeated it again with more strength. "Captain." Tom sighed, half smiling. "If you say so." For a while, silence filled the barn. Lyra leaned back, breathing softly. Tom studied her more closely. Her skin had a faint glow, like light under water. Her eyes held tiny sparks inside them, as if the stars themselves lived there. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder, showing thin lines on her skin that looked like silver veins. Tom wondered if she was hurt badly. He got a cloth, dipped it in water, and carefully cleaned her arm where the metal had trapped her. She flinched at first, but then relaxed, letting him help. When he tied a strip of cloth around her wound, she whispered something in her language. Words Tom could not understand, but the way she looked at him made the meaning clear. It was thanks. Tom sat back and tried to calm his thoughts. A part of him still wanted to believe this was only a dream, yet the warm weight of her hand resting on the blanket and the distant glow of her crashed ship reminded him this was real. "Where are you from?" Tom asked, pointing up at the sky. Lyra followed his hand and looked at the stars. She spoke slowly, in broken words, "Far, sky, many suns, travel, ship." Her voice was soft, like wind through leaves. Tom nodded. He could only catch pieces of what she meant, but it was enough to know she was from far away. She had traveled through the stars, and now she was here on his farm, calling him captain. The night passed slowly. Tom stayed awake, making sure she was safe. From time to time, she closed her eyes but then opened them again, studying him as if trying to understand what kind of man he was. She seemed amazed that he had helped her. Without knowing who she was. In the morning, the sun rose gently over the valley. Golden light entered the barn, touching the hay and the wooden beams. Lyra sat up, her eyes brighter than before. She looked stronger after rest, though her arm was still weak. Tom brought her bread and milk, the simple food he always ate. She studied the bread carefully, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened at the taste. She chewed slowly, then nodded, as if to say it was good. Tom smiled, feeling proud of something so ordinary. When she finished, she touched her chest again and said, "Lyra." Then she pointed at him. "Captain." Tom laughed softly. "I told you, not Captain." But deep inside, he felt something stir when she called him that. There was respect in her voice, more than he had ever heard from anyone before. Later, Tom took her outside for fresh air. She looked around the farm with wonder, touching the wooden fence, watching the chickens, and listening to the wind through the grass. Everything seemed new to her, as if she had never seen such a simple place. She stopped and looked at the sky. Her face grew serious. Tom followed her gaze and saw the thin trail of smoke rising from the forest where her ship had fallen. She spoke, slowly, struggling with words. "Ship broken, need a fix." Tom understood enough. Her ship was damaged, and she wanted to repair it. He looked at her, then at the smoke. "It was dangerous to leave it there. Others might find it. We will fix it," Tom said firmly, though he had no idea how. Lyra turned her glowing eyes toward him. She tilted her head, as if measuring his courage. Then she gave a small smile, the first true smile he had seen from her. "Again," she said, "Captain." Tom shook his head, but this time he did not argue. Something about the way she said it made him stand taller. He was only a farmer, but maybe to her he was something more. As the day passed, Tom realized his life had changed forever. He had saved a woman not from his world, and now she trusted him. The wreck in the forest was only the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he could not turn away. She needed him, and in a strange way, he felt he needed her too. The bond between them had only just begun, but already Tom could feel it growing. She had called him captain, and though he did not yet believe it, he knew those words carried a weight he would soon understand. The days that followed were unlike any Tom had ever known. His farm, once quiet and predictable, was now filled with a strange energy. Lyra stayed hidden in the barn during the day, resting and slowly regaining her strength. At night, when the valley was silent, she would step outside and look at the stars. Tom often stood beside her, trying to imagine what she saw when she looked upward. For him, the stars were faraway lights. For her, they were places she had traveled, homes of her, people, and passed through endless space. At first, speaking with her was difficult. Her words were broken, and she knew little of his language. But Lyra was quick to learn. She would point at things around the farm and ask their names. Tom would answer with patience. He would point at a bucket and say, "Bucket." She would repeat the word until it sounded right. He would point at bread and say, "Bread." And she would echo the word softly. Day by day, she collected words like seeds, planting them in her memory until they grew into understanding. In return, she taught him pieces of her own language. Her words were flowing, filled with sounds Tom had never heard before. He struggled to repeat them, often making her laugh gently when he failed. Still, she encouraged him, guiding his tongue until he came close to the right sound. One evening, she taught him a word that meant friend. Tom spoke it back to her, and she smiled with a light that warmed him. Lyra also showed him small devices she had carried from the ship before it burned too badly. One was a stone that glowed with a soft blue light when touched. Tom held it in wonder, feeling its warmth in his hand. She explained in her broken way that it was an energy stone, a kind of power source her people used. Another object looked like a thin piece of glass, but when Lyra pressed it, shapes of light floated above it. The images were stars and strange. symbols. She tried to explain that it was a map, showing her travels across the sky. Tom listened carefully, though much of it was beyond him, despite the differences between them. They found common ground in simple things. Tom showed her how to milk a cow, though she laughed at the animal's loud moo. He gave her fresh bread from his oven, and she ate it with quiet joy. Lyra, in turn, showed him how her people stored knowledge in small crystals, each holding voices. In songs, when she placed one crystal near the glowing stone, soft music filled the barn. The sound was unlike anything Tom had ever heard, smooth and deep, as if the stars themselves were singing. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Lyra often called him Captain still, and though Tom always tried to correct her, she would only smile and shake her head. To her, the word was not just a title, it was a truth. In her eyes, the one who saves a ship becomes its leader, and no argument could change her mind. Tom began to accept it, not fully believing, but not rejecting it either. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the valley in gold, Lyra asked about his world. She pointed at the fields and the small farmhouse. Home, she said. Tom nodded. Yes, home. He tried to explain that it was a simple life, filled with work on the land, caring for animals, and surviving through the seasons. He told her about planting seeds, watching them grow, and harvesting crops in autumn. She listened with wide eyes, as if farming was as strange to her as her glowing crystals were to him. Then she spoke of her own people, though her words were limited. She told him they were travelers, moving from world to world in peace. They studied, learned, and shared knowledge. She explained that they avoided humans because humans were unpredictable. Some humans would welcome them, but others might fear them or attack them. That was why her ship had stayed hidden until the accident. Tom felt a weight in his chest when she said this. He understood her caution. If the villagers discovered her, they might not see her as a friend. They might only see danger. That was why he had to keep her hidden, no matter what. Still, Lyra said softly, "You, different." Her glowing eyes fixed on him. "You help, no fear." Tom looked away, feeling a strange warmth rise in him. He had acted on instinct when he saved her, but hearing her say it made him realize the choice had meaning. She was alive because he had trusted his heart instead of his fear. That night, as they sat under the stars outside the barn, Lyra traced patterns in the sky with her finger. She showed him groups of stars and gave them names in her language. Some were places she had visited, others were stories from her people. Tom listened with quiet wonder, realizing how vast her world was compared to this small valley. Yet despite the difference, they sat together like equals, sharing the same sky. Over time, Lyra's strength returned, though her arms still carried the wound from the crash. She began to move more freely around the farm, helping Tom with small tasks. She carried buckets of water, fed the chickens, and even tried to cut hay, though she laughed at her own clumsy attempts. Tom was surprised by how willing she was to learn, even in a world so different from her own. One afternoon, Tom found her studying the old tools in his shed. She touched the rusty metal with curiosity, then turned to him with a serious look. "Fixed ship," she said firmly. Tom frowned. "I do not know how," he admitted. Lyra shook her head. "I show you. Hands, strong." He realized then that she wanted his help to repair the broken vessel. She trusted him not just to protect her, but to work with her on something far beyond his understanding. The thought was frightening, yet also exciting. Perhaps this was what she meant when she called him captain. Not a leader of men, but a partner in survival. Tom nodded slowly. "We will try." Lyra's eyes lit up with relief. She gave him a small smile, her glowing eyes softer than before. "Yes, Captain," she said again, as if the word itself gave her strength. That night, Tom lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling. His farm had always been his world, but now another world had come to him. He thought of Lyra's glowing eyes, her strange music, and her quiet trust in him. For the first time, he wondered if his life was meant for more than planting seeds and tending animals. Perhaps his path now stretched beyond the valley into the stars themselves. The crash had brought her to him, but the days together had built something stronger than accident. They were no longer strangers. They were learning about each other, step by step, word by word, and though he did not yet understand where this road would lead, Tom knew one thing clearly: he would not let her face it alone. The morning sun rose gently over the valley, touching the fields with golden light. Tom stood at the edge of the barn with a hammer in one hand and worry in his mind. For many days he had lived with the knowledge that Lyra's ship lay broken. In the forest, he knew the fire had died down, but the wreck was still there, waiting to be found. If anyone from the village stumbled across it, questions would spread faster than he could answer them. Lyra walked out beside him, her glowing eyes steady. She wore the same torn uniform, but her steps were stronger now. Her arm still carried the wound from the crash, wrapped in cloth Tom had changed each day. She looked at the hammer, then at Tom. Her voice was soft but firm. "Today, ship." Tom nodded. The time had come. They carried ropes, tools, and buckets of water into the forest. The animals watched as they left, as if sensing something unusual about this trip. The path was quiet except for the call of birds. Tom's boots pressed into the earth, his heart heavy with thoughts. Fixing a ship from another world seemed impossible, but Lyra believed it could be done, and that belief was enough for him to try. When they reached the clearing, Tom's breath caught again. The sight of the silver vessel lying among broken trees was both terrible and beautiful. The fire had burned out, leaving black scars across its surface. Parts of the hull were bent, while other sections still glimmered with smooth metal. Strange lights blinked faintly, like a heartbeat struggling to continue. Lyra walked toward the wreck with a slow, careful step. She placed her hand on the metal and closed her eyes. Tom saw a sadness in her face, as if she was touching a wounded friend. After a moment she opened her eyes and turned to him. "We fix together." Tom set down the tools. "Tell me what to do." Lyra studied the damage, then pointed to a section of the hull that was cracked, close, strong metal. She picked up the hammer and tried to strike, but her arm was weak. Tom took it from her and began to bend the metal back into shape. The work was hard, but his years on the farm had given him strength. Sparks flew when he struck, and sweat ran down his face. Slowly the bent edges began to move closer, sealing the crack. Lyra guided him with gestures, sometimes stopping him and pointing to another section. She used a small device to heat the metal, pressing it until it softened. Tom followed her lead, holding pieces together until they cooled. The two of them worked side by side, their breaths heavy, their hands moving in rhythm. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then sank again toward the west. Tom's muscles ached, but he did not stop. Each strike of the hammer, each turn of the rope, was more than just work. It was a promise to Lyra that he would not fail her. In the evening, they rested on the ground, drinking water. Lyra looked at Tom with quiet pride. "Strong hands," she said, "like Captain." Tom laughed softly, shaking his head. "Still, a farmer." She tilted her head. "Farmer, Captain, both." Her words stayed with him. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps being a captain was not about ships or uniforms. It was about standing beside someone when they needed you most. The next day, they returned with more tools. Tom had built a wooden cart to carry heavy parts. Together they removed pieces of broken metal and dragged them aside. Lyra examined the inner parts of the ship, her hands moving quickly as if she knew every piece by heart. She showed Tom glowing wires that pulsed faintly, telling him which ones were alive and which were dead. At one point, she pulled out a small crystal and held it to her ear. She frowned, then shook her head. Tom did not understand, but he could see her worry. The ship was like a body, and some of its heartbeats were missing. Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "We will find a way." Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes softening. She gave a small nod. "Yes, together." One afternoon, as they worked, they heard voices in the distance. Tom froze. Lyra's eyes widened. The sound of men carried through the trees. Tom quickly covered the tools with branches and pulled Lyra into the shadows. Two villagers walked near the clearing, pointing at the black smoke stains. "Strange fire here." One man said, Trees burn like lightning struck. Maybe a storm, the other answered. But no storm last week. Tom held his breath. Lyra stayed perfectly still beside him, her glowing eyes dimming as she pressed against the shadows. After a few minutes, the villagers moved away, shaking their heads when the danger passed. Lyra looked at Tom with concern. Not safe, she whispered. Tom nodded. We must hide it better. The next day he brought large tarps from the farm. Together they stretched the fabric over the ship, weighing it down with branches and mud so it looked like part of the forest floor. From a distance, it appeared as nothing more than fallen wood. Only up close would someone notice the truth. At night, they returned to the barn to rest. Tom sat by the lantern, cleaning his tools, while Lyra studied the glowing map glass. She had saved. She traced a path of stars with her finger, then looked at him. Home, far, she said. Tom leaned forward. Will you go back? She paused, then gave a slow shake of her head. Not yet. Ship travel again. But I stay. Why? Tom asked, surprised. Lyra's eyes met his. Because Captain here. Tom looked away, unsure how to answer. But deep inside, he felt a warmth he could not deny. The following week was filled with more work. Tom built a shelter of branches around the clearing to keep rain from the ship. Lyra guided him in repairing the energy system, connecting wires with her glowing stone. Sparks danced as power returned to a few lights. Slowly, the vessel began to hum again, faint but alive. One evening, as the ship glowed softly, Tom and Lyra stood together, watching. She smiled for the first time without sadness. Ship breath again, she said. Tom smiled back, his heart full. Then we are close. She looked at him, her eyes shining brighter than the lights of the ship. Yes, Captain, very close. In that moment, Tom felt something shift inside him. He was no longer just a farmer who had found a fallen star. He was part of something larger, something that reached beyond his valley. The work on the ship was hard, but it was not only about metal and fire. It was about trust, about standing side by side, and about building a bond stronger than fear. The ship was not yet ready, but neither of them doubted they would succeed. Together, they would bring it back to life. The days of repair had given Tom and Lyra hope. Each time they worked, the ship came closer to life. The hum of power grew stronger, and the lights inside glowed brighter still. Tom knew the wreck could not stay hidden forever, even with tarps and branches covering it. The blackened trees told a story anyone could notice. He prayed the forest would remain silent, but deep inside he knew silence never lasted long. One evening, as Tom returned from the village with tools, he heard uneasy talk among the people. 2 hunters claimed they had seen strange lights in the woods. Another man swore he heard a humming sound when he walked near the valley. Most laughed at the tales, but a few listened closely. Tom kept his face calm, yet his chest tightened. The hunters were getting too close. That night, Tom told Lyra what he had heard. She listened quietly, her glowing eyes darkening with worry. Danger, she said simply. We must be careful, Tom answered. I will keep them away. For 2 days, the farm was peaceful. Lyra stayed hidden in the barn, and Tom worked in the fields, pretending nothing was different. But on the 3rd night, the peace broke. Tom was sitting at his table when his dog began to bark fiercely. He grabbed his lantern and stepped outside. In the distance, near the forest's edge, he saw moving lights. They were not the gentle glow of fireflies or the soft shine of stars. They were lanterns carried by men. Tom hurried to the barn. Lyra was already standing, her eyes wide. Who? She asked. Hunters, Tom whispered. They're searching. Lyra's hand went to the small device she carried, a round disc. No larger than Tom's palm. She pressed it, and a faint blue glow spread across her fingers. Shield, she said. But weak. Tom looked at the device. It might protect her for a short time, but it would not stop determined men. He knew the hunters were not like the curious villagers. They wanted to take what they found, no matter the cost. The lights grew closer. Tom could hear voices now. There's something in the woods, one man said. I saw the fire with my own eyes. Tonight we find it, another answered. Tom's mind raced. He could not let them reach the ship. He turned to Lyra. Stay here. Do not leave the barn unless I call you. She shook her head quickly. No, together, please. Tom said firmly, if they see you, they will not understand. Trust me. Lyra hesitated, then placed her glowing hand on his arm. Captain, she whispered, her voice heavy with trust. Tom nodded, feeling the weight of the word. He stepped outside, closing the barn door behind him. The night air was cool, the moon shining faintly above. He walked toward the forest, carrying his lantern high. When the hunters saw him, they stopped. There were 3 of them, their clothes dark, their eyes sharp. They carried long sticks with metal ends, not for farming but for taking life. What are you doing here, farmer? One asked, his voice rough. Tom kept his face calm. This is my land. What are you doing here at night? We are looking, the tallest man said. There is something in the woods. Not natural. We will find it. Tom shook his head. The fire you saw was a storm's work. Trees burn when lightning strikes. There is nothing for you here. The men exchanged glances. One stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You hide something. Tom stood his ground. I hide nothing. Go home before you bring trouble. The men laughed, but it was not a friendly sound. If there is nothing, then you will not mind if we search. The tallest one said. Tom's heart pounded. He knew if they reached the clearing, they would discover the ship. He tightened his grip on the lantern. You will not go into my forest, he said firmly. This land is mine. Leave now. The hunters frowned. They were not used to being challenged by a simple farmer. One raised his stick, pointing it at Tom. Move aside. Tom's breath came fast, but he did not step back. No, he said, his voice strong. You crossed me first. The men stared at him, surprised by his courage. The air grew tense. Then, from behind the barn, a soft blue light appeared. Tom turned in shock. Lyra stood in the shadows, holding her small device. The faint shield shimmered around her, glowing like a bubble of light. The hunters gasped. What is that? One shouted. Tom rushed to stand in front of her, raising his arms. She is under my protection, he said. His voice rang louder than he expected. You will not touch her. The men hesitated, fear flashing in their eyes at the sight of the strange glow. Lyra's shield flickered, but she held it steady. Tom stepped forward, his face hard. Leave now. If you value your lives, go back. The hunters whispered among themselves, their confidence breaking. They were not brave men, only greedy ones. The sight of power they could not understand frightened them. At last, the tallest man spat on the ground. This is not finished, he growled. Then they turned and walked quickly into the night, their lanterns fading into the trees. When they were gone, the shield flickered once more, then vanished. Lyra fell to her knees. Breathing hard, Tom caught her and helped her stand. You should not have come out, he said gently, though his heart swelled with relief. She looked at him with tired but steady eyes. Together, she repeated. Tom smiled faintly. He could not argue with that. The rest of the night was quiet, though Tom did not sleep. He stood watch outside the barn, his lantern burning low. Each sound in the forest made him grip his staff tighter. He knew the hunters would return one day. Their greed would not let them forget what they had seen. But he also knew something else. He was no longer alone. Lyra trusted him, and he trusted her. Together they had faced danger and driven it away. He was still a farmer, but when she called him captain, he began to believe it. As the first light of dawn touched the valley, Tom looked at the barn where Lyra rested. Trouble had come from outside, and more would come again. But he was ready. Whatever the future held, he would stand between her and the world, no matter the cost. The morning air was cool and fresh as Tom walked toward the forest. The clearing where the ship lay had grown familiar, almost like a secret garden. Today, he and Lyra would finish the repairs. For days they had worked tirelessly, bending metal, reconnecting wires, and restoring power to the strange vessel. Each step had brought them closer to completion, but the final stage was always the hardest. Lyra stood near the ship, her glowing eyes scanning every surface. Her arm had healed enough to move freely. Though a faint line of silver veins still ran along her skin, she touched the hull gently, whispering words in her language. Tom did not understand them, but he felt their meaning in the way she moved. Encouragement, hope, and trust. "We are ready," she said in broken English. "Finish her today." Tom nodded. He carried tools, ropes, and a small bag of spare materials he had collected from his shed. He set to work immediately, hammering the last bent pieces of metal into place while Lyra adjusted the inner circuits of the ship. Sparks flew as wires connected, and the faint hum of power grew louder. "This piece is weak," Lyra said, pointing to a section near the control panel. She handed Tom a small glowing rod. "Place here. Strength." Tom followed her instructions carefully, pressing the rod into the gap. A wave of light spread across the panel, and the hum of the ship became steady and strong. Lyra's eyes shone brighter, reflecting the glow of the ship's energy. "Good," she said softly. "Almost done." The day passed with careful work. Tom learned to follow Lyra's guidance, even when he did not fully understand what each device did. She guided him with gestures and simple words, showing him which connections were vital and which were optional. They moved together like a team, each trusting the other completely. As the sun began to lower in the sky, they reached the last section of the ship, the engine chamber. The heart of the vessel had been damaged badly in the crash, and even Lyra looked worried. "Delicate," she said. Careful." Tom took a deep breath and nodded. He had never worked with anything like this before. The engine pulsed faintly, as if it were alive but weak. Lyra handed him a glowing crystal and pointed to a small socket. He placed the crystal inside, and it fit perfectly. A warm light spread through the chamber, and the engine hummed steadily. "It works," Lyra whispered, almost afraid to speak too loudly. Tom smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment he had never known. "It works," he repeated, watching the ship glow under the evening sun. Lyra turned to him, her glowing eyes bright. "Captain," she said, her voice filled with awe. "Ship ready." Tom felt a strange pride. He was just a farmer, yet here he was, standing beside a traveler from the stars, helping her bring life back to her ship. He realized that being called captain was not just about command. It was about trust, courage, and action. In Lyra's eyes, he had proven himself. Suddenly, a sound broke the quiet evening. Leaves rustled, and a branch snapped. Tom's heart skipped a beat after the hunter's visit. He knew the forest was no longer entirely safe. He grabbed a nearby stick for defense and stepped toward the noise. Lyra touched his arm, shaking her head. "No, wait," she said. She pressed a hand to the ship. The glow brightened, spreading outward in a protective field. Tom watched in amazement as a soft barrier of energy formed around the vessel. A figure appeared from the trees. Tom could barely see them, but it was one of the hunters. Returning as he had feared, he raised his lantern, ready to defend the ship. When the man froze, the glow from the ship made him step back, his hand trembling. "It's alive," the hunter whispered. Lyra's shield pulsed gently, and the man dropped his weapon. "Leave," Tom said firmly. "Now, or you will face consequences you do not understand." The hunter hesitated, then turned and ran back into the forest. Tom exhaled slowly, his muscles relaxing for the first time in days. He looked at Lyra, who nodded with quiet satisfaction. Together, they had not only repaired the ship, but also protected it from those who sought to take it. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Lyra activated the ship fully. Lights glowed across the hull, softly illuminating the clearing. Panels shifted into place, and the engine pulsed with a steady rhythm. The hum of power was now strong enough to fill the valley, and Tom could feel the energy in the air. She turned to him, her glowing eyes filled with gratitude. "Captain, thanks," she said. "Without you," Tom shook his head, smiling. "No thanks needed. You are alive. That is enough." For a moment, they simply stood there, looking at the ship. The smoke from the old crash had faded, and the clearing seemed peaceful once more. Tom realized that the impossible task of fixing a vessel from the stars had been completed. Because of their trust and teamwork, Lyra walked slowly to the ship's control panel. She touched the glowing symbols, and a soft voice filled the air, speaking in a language Tom could not understand. The ship's doors opened with a gentle hiss, revealing the inside, perfectly restored. The instruments glowed with light, and the seat at the center seemed ready for a pilot once more. Tom stepped closer, studying the vessel. "You are ready," he said. Lyra nodded. "Ready. Travel." She paused and looked at him. "Well, come?" Tom felt a sudden thrill. Traveling with her meant leaving his valley, leaving his farm, leaving everything familiar behind. Yet, he also felt that he could not refuse. She had trusted him, relied on him, and called him captain. That was more than honor, it was a bond he could not ignore. He placed a hand on the side of the ship. "Yes," he said firmly, "I will go." Lyra's eyes widened, and a soft smile spread across her face. The glow round her grew brighter as she touched the controls. "Together," she said. Tom nodded. Together, the night air seemed to hum with energy. The ship vibrated gently beneath their hands. Alive and ready for the journey ahead, Tom looked at the stars above, realizing that the world he had known was only the beginning. Beyond the valley, beyond the forests, were thousands of worlds waiting to be explored, and now he would explore them not as a simple farmer, but as a captain. In Lyra's eyes, for the first time, Tom understood the true meaning of courage. It was not in battles or weapons. It was in trust, in standing by someone who needed you, and in believing that together, even the impossible could be achieved. As the final repairs were completed, the clearing seemed to glow with promise. The stars above, the soft hum of the ship, and the presence of Lyra made the world feel larger, brighter, and full of possibilities. Tom took a deep breath, ready for whatever lay ahead. The final repairs were done, but their journey was only beginning. The first light of dawn broke across the valley, painting the fields in gold and shadow. Tom and Lyra stood beside the ship, now fully repaired and glowing softly with its inner power. The air was quiet except for the gentle hum of the vessel. The final repairs had been completed the night before, but now a new moment of anticipation filled them both. Today, they would leave the valley and begin a journey beyond the stars. Tom's heart raced. He had spent his life working the fields, tending animals, and living simply. Now, standing beside a traveler from another world, he realized his life was about to change completely. Yet, despite fear, he felt ready. Lyra's presence gave him courage. She had trusted him, called him captain, and together they had overcome impossible challenges. Lyra moved to the control panel, her hands glowing as they touched the instruments. Symbols and lights danced beneath her fingers, responding to commands only she could give. Tom watched, fascinated, as the ship seemed to come alive, preparing for travel. "Are you ready, Captain?" Lyra asked, her voice steady, her eyes shining brightly. Tom nodded, gripping the edge of the vessel. "I am ready," she smiled, a gentle and confident smile that made Tom feel as though everything possible was within reach. She guided him to a seat beside her. "Seat here," she said. Together, Tom settled into the chair, still in awe of the glowing instruments and floating holograms around them. Lyra touched a series of glowing panels, and the ship's hum increased, vibrating gently under their hands. Outside, the forest seemed to hold its breath, as if it too understood that this moment was extraordinary. Then, with a soft push from Lyra, the ship lifted from the ground. The earth fell away beneath them, and the fields of the valley grew smaller and smaller. Tom leaned forward, his eyes wide with amazement. Trees, rivers, and hills disappeared behind them, replaced by the vast, open sky. Lyra's hands moved skillfully, guiding the vessel higher. "Hold tight," she said. "Air, fast." Tom's stomach dropped with the sensation of rising, yet he laughed, unable to contain his excitement. For the first time, he felt the full scope of what lay beyond his valley. The world he had known was small compared to the universe now opening before him. Stars stretched across the sky like diamonds, and the curvature of the horizon reminded him of the vastness of space. As they passed above the clouds, Tom could see the sun rising over distant mountains, casting golden light on the valleys below. The wind rushed past, even at this height, though the ship's interior remained calm and warm. Lyra glanced at him and smiled, seeing his wonder. "Beautiful," Tom whispered. Lyra nodded. "Far home," she said. "Many worlds." Tom's eyes widened. "You've been to many places?" She nodded again, her glow intensifying slightly. "Learnt share. Travel." The ship moved smoothly, almost like it was alive, sensing their wishes and responding to them. Tom began to touch the controls under her guidance, learning small actions to assist in navigation. Even though he had never flown a vessel, Lyra's patient teaching made it possible. Step by step, he became a partner in the journey, no longer merely a passenger. Hours passed, though Tom had no way to measure time. The stars shifted, some glowing brighter, some dimmer, as they navigated through a galaxy that seemed endless. Lyra showed him small clusters of worlds, pointing with a glowing finger. Some were planets with oceans and mountains. Others were shrouded in clouds or surrounded by rings of ice. Each one told a story, and though Tom could not understand all of them, he felt the wonder in Lyra's words and gestures. Then, a distant point of light caught Tom's attention. "What is that?" he asked. Lyra's eyes focused, and she nodded. "Other travelers, friends. Not same as me, but same path." Tom realized they were not alone. Out in the galaxy, there were others like Lyra, travelers moving between worlds, exploring, learning, sharing. And now, he was a part of this vast community, trusted and recognized by someone who had lived among the stars. The journey continued, moving past glowing nebulae, star clusters, and planets of every color. Tom learned more from Lyra about navigation, energy, and the delicate balance of space travel. She taught him to read the stars as maps, to sense currents of energy that guided the ship, and to trust his instincts when decisions had to be made. Quickly, for the first time, Tom realized that being captain was not about command or control. It was about responsibility, courage, and partnership. Lyra's trust gave him the courage to face the unknown, and together, they could achieve anything. As they traveled farther, Lyra finally spoke words that made Tom's heart skip. "Captain C. Home?" Tom followed her finger and saw a small planet in the distance, glowing faintly under a blue sun. "Is that your home?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, many suns, many worlds, but this special returns soon." Tom felt a mixture of awe and curiosity. The galaxy was vast, but this planet held a special place in Lyra's heart. He knew that when the time came, he would learn more about her world, her people, and the journeys that had brought her here. The stars stretched endlessly before them. Tom realized that life was bigger than the valley, bigger than the farm, bigger than any world he had ever known. And yet, he did not feel small. He felt part of something greater, a story that stretched across galaxies. He looked at Lyra, her glowing eyes shining like the stars around them, and felt a bond stronger than fear, stronger than distance. Together, they moved forward, guided by trust, courage, and the bond they had built on Earth. Tom no longer saw himself as a simple farmer. He was captain in her eyes, and a partner in a journey that would carry them across the universe. The ship moved faster now, gliding past planets, weaving through star systems, and diving into colorful nebulae. Tom felt exhilaration, wonder, and peace. He looked at Lyra, and she smiled, her glow reflecting the infinite possibilities around them. For the first time, Tom understood what it meant to be part of something truly extraordinary. The valley, the farm, and the simple life he had known were only the beginning. Beyond the stars lay adventure, discovery, and friendship, and he would face it all with Lyra by his side, guiding, trusting, and believing in him as he believed in her. As they approached a distant galaxy, Tom whispered softly, "Let's see what is out there." Together, Lyra's eyes shone brightly. "Together, Captain." The ship hummed with power, and together they sailed into the unknown, leaving the valley behind but carrying its lessons and trust in their hearts. The universe stretched before them, vast, mysterious, and full of life waiting to be discovered. And Tom knew, for the first time, that this was where he belonged. The journey beyond had begun.